Hi, I'm Jim Soloman, creator of thesolilama.com, and I want to welcome you to the very first Solilama show. Before we begin, if you liked this interview or you found it interesting, please click the like button down below. And if you want more videos like this to come right to you, then please subscribe to our channel. All right, so today we have a very special interview for you in celebration of the TVI's re-release on Omnivore Recordings. Jason Falkner was kind enough to spend some time with me and talk about the album. Jason and I talked for over an hour about all aspects of this record, from the initial conversations in the parking lot to finding the album a home. We literally left no stone unturned. For those of you unfamiliar with TVIs, they're basically a quote-unquote supergroup consisting of Jason Falkner, Roger Joseph Manning Jr., and Brian Reitzell. These guys pooled their talents together and applied their amazing songwriting abilities to the new wave synth pop genre. Now, Jason said in the interview during the parking lot conversations that we knew that we could do this right. And right they were, because what came out was an amazing album that's as fresh today as it did when it was originally released almost 10 years ago. This must-have album can be found on Omnivore Recordings at www.omnivorerecordings.com/artist/TV-eyes. One last thing before we get into the interview. Because of the length of the interview, and I know that not everyone has time to sit down for an hour and 15 minutes to listen to this straight through, you can also watch this interview broken up into 8 different parts by clicking here if you want. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to present for your pleasure my interview with the inventive genius, Jason Falkner of TVIs. Great. Well, I really appreciate you doing this interview with me because I just think that this is a really great album and it needed to be talked about.
Yeah. Thanks.
I wanted to start out for people who are just discovering, this TVI's album through Omnivore and really take them through the birth of it, because to me, I find the story pretty fascinating because your collective musical careers have been kind of weaving in and out of each other's lives basically since 1990. Yeah. And researching this part of the interview has been really the most fun for me because, I even took out a sheet and I had to make a timeline connecting all the dots of how it all came together.
Yeah.
And what I finally kind of put together is that it's really one band, in my opinion, that really I don't think TV's Eyes would have happened if it wasn't for them. But basically, TV Eyes is, it's kind of cliche, but you guys are kind of a power pop supergroup that consists of you, Roger Manning, and Brian Reitzell. And you played with Roger and Jellyfish and recorded one album with them in 1990. And at the same time, Brian's in Red Cross, which was basically kind of like one of your musical peers, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
So Steve McDonald from Red Cross is playing on the Jellyfish album. Roger co-wrote a song on Phase Shifter, but did you guys really know Brian back then as well, bumping into him in festivals and things like that? Or was it more of a casual relationship, or were you guys pretty tight with him back then as well?
Well, I didn't know Brian. Brian was in Red Cross when Jellyfish and Red Cross were simultaneously happening in the early 90s. But Andy knew Brian. In fact, I think Andy is kind of the reason that Andy introduced the McDonald brothers to Brian Reitzell, and then he joined the band. So there was a Jellyfish connection right there. I didn't know Brian. I met Brian, I guess, in like the early 90s, 92 or something. For a while there, Brian was talking to me about leaving Red Cross and wanted to join my band because I was about to embark on a solo thing. And I guess we talked about him playing with me as early as 92. And then the Grays thing happened. So that went out the window. But yeah, I've always loved Brian. He's an awesome guy. And yeah, that's how that all came about.
And so then you leave Jellyfish because of musical creative differences. I know that's been hashed out in many interviews, but
yeah,
one of the things that I found interesting in that last interview that you gave was how Andy Sturmer came up to you and, apologized for all those years, and wondering with you and Roger, when you guys start interacting again, did you guys kind of have to rekindle your relationship and kind of warm it back up? I mean, how did it come to be that you start interacting with Roger again?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I was probably equally as scorned by Roger in a way as I was Andy by the time I had left Jellyfish. I mean, those guys were both, they were basically a songwriting duo that with me in the band. They brought me in the band because they said that they wanted me to write as well, and they wanted it to be a democracy and all this, stuff, all this propaganda.
Right.
And so then obviously the story that I've told 1,000 times is that when I joined, that wasn't the case. And they kept saying, oh, it's a great song, but it's not right for this band. I'm like, oh, okay, that doesn't really work, but okay. So after, 2 years of that and a full year of touring, and I just kind of when we ended the tour, I came home to LA and went back up to the Bay Area, and I just never returned. And I remember them calling and saying, come on, man, we're ready for you to weave your guitar magic on these demos. And I was like, well, can I write some songs? And I said, I have a ton of new songs. And they're like, yeah, well, you know how we are. And I was like, well, you know how I am now too. And the answer is no, and I'm not coming up there and fuck off. And so, yeah, I mean, I didn't want to work with Roger really ever again. I mean, I just was like, I had been under their thumb for those couple of years, and I was doing just fine on my own. I was happy. I got signed to Elektra in '95, and that record came out in '96, and the Grays record happened. Obviously, that didn't really do anything commercially, but it's kind of one of those lost classic records.
It's a treasure, yeah.
That was a whole other situation that I just kind of fell into that I kind of instantly resented. But there's the theme in my life it's a lifetime of resentment. But yeah, so the TBS thing, the origin of that is basically when Brian and Roger were doing this bogus sequel to this bogus soundtrack to a non-existent sequel to Logan's Run called Logan's Sanctuary, and it was this really fun kind of tripped out psychedelic synth soundtrack thing. And I loved it. They had me come down and sing a couple of things, like a kind of a Scott Walker, Tom Jones, like a cocksure 60s, that whole thing. And I did that and played a little guitar and bass, and then we were in the parking lot saying goodbye and just kind of, commenting on how fun that was. And then we just started riffing about why don't we make a full-on new wave record? And it really can't be overemphasized that this was like a laughable concept at the time. In 1999, this is before that whole slew of bands in the early 2000s that came out and started incorporating synthesizers and started incorporating some of the quote unquote influences of bands from the late 70s and early 80s. We were still in grunge fallout in 99. And so we were just kind of oh my God, yeah, it looked like something like Gang of Four and Two Way Army and then even Duran in Japan and Dali's Car and all this stuff, and we were just cracking up we could do that right. And so we actually did it, which was the funny thing, because usually, I've had that kind of conversation in a parking lot or in a bar or in a restaurant dozens of times with like-minded individuals who are great. And we're like, yeah, let's start a supergroup or whatever. And I'm seeing you in 5 years. Let's do this. And it never happens because people are busy. And this we just did it. And we spent our own money. We never made a penny off this record to date. And we just did it for love. And what happened was the original concepts were all kind of based around synth riffs that Roger and I were coming up with. And I quickly realized that this was going to turn into a joke. I didn't want to put my name on a joke, like a pastiche, look at these guys making a, like a Moog cookbook.
Right.
Synth rock. I was like, no. This has to be amazing. These songs have to be amazing. Lyrics have to be amazing. There have to be themes, and it has to be a real record. And So I just locked myself in my room and woodshedded and kind of developed these recurring themes. One of them being this kind of paranoid, whistleblowing town crier, if you will, that's trying to warn people of the impending doom. And the other one was just full-blown lust. And it was really fun for me because those are two things that I don't normally tackle in my own songwriting. I mean, my own songwriting is probably way more earnest and a bit more abstract and way more kind of like love and all of its complications. And this was just like softcore porn.
So is that where the softcore name came from?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm pretty sure I knew that name, and I just thought, how can that not be the name of a band? I mean, and secondly, that's the most amazing name for this band, for this music, is softcore. And of course, there was a band called Softcore that also, of course, amounted to nothing, as time told. But we basically kind of got a cease and desist from them because we did something. I can't remember what it was. We didn't do any shows of Softcore, but we had a lawyer look into it, and he was like, "Yeah, they will not sell the name, and you have to find a name." So I was in Brian's car, and we were parking somewhere to go eat, and I had just bought the Iggy TVI record, and I was just like, "What are TVIs, man? I know it's just super blatant ripoff, but it's a cool name." And I also had a shirt that I used to wear all the time that was a really cool kind of like kind of a bootleg looking crappy graphic that said TVOD. And I thought that would be a cool name as well, but TVIs is better. So yeah, that's how that came about.
Yeah, I was wondering if the, after you had to change the name, if, the name was driven by the theme of the album, like of watching and things like that, or did the album name drive the content of the album?
No, it would be A, because the record was basically done by the time we came up with that name. So what happened with the recording is we did the first chunk of it, the bulk of it, and I mixed it, and I was basically kind of engineering, the guy at the console, with a guitar and kind of like when we all produced it together. And that version was done. We were all happy with it. And then Brian and I were in Air at the same time. And I started, for some weird reason, because I love organic things, I don't even know what came over me, but I decided that I wanted to replace all of the organic drums I wanted to sound replace them with drum machines and vintage drum machines. And Brian was like, hell yeah, like he jumped all over that. So he tackled that undertaking, which took a couple of months. And then Roger and I went and basically almost took the, in a weird way, we just made it way more modern for the day. But we kind of took the human element a little bit out of it, because it is kind of it's supposed to be kind of cold and detached, in the vein of the Berlin era Bowie stuff, where that's just really weird and detached, but it also has this heart to it.
Right.
And so then Roger and I moved everything that was recorded and edited and put more synths and made the guitars more bright and kind of disturbing, and and that's the record that has just come out. Now Omnivore also is releasing my first mixes. So that sounds a bit more punk.
Oh, cool. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Because Crash Your Car is not on the re-release, and to me that song is so punk. Yeah,
exactly. No, that's not on the re-release because we decided that didn't fit with kind of retooled version of the record, but of course it fits the original version. It's one of the key songs to the original version. So yeah, that'll be. I believe that's all going to be released CD and vinyl again in the very beginning of 2015.
Okay, and it's funny you mentioned Air, because that's the band I was talking about in the beginning, where they dug the Moog cookbook and asked Roger and Brian to kind of do remixes, which leads to them creating the touring band, which has Brian Reitzell in it. And then you are working on 10,000 Hertz Legend with all three of those guys, or all two of those guys as well. So, I mean, there's just like this air connection. Actually, for the song Time's Up, to me, it just kind of sounds like a love letter to Air because it sounds so Air influenced.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, it's, of course, I love Air, and I loved every minute of being with those guys. I love them as people. I certainly loved playing that show with them every night. It was like walking, in space.
I still have the pick. I went to the Pontiac, Michigan show. Sorry to interrupt, but
cool.
You were playing bass with them. I actually still have the pick that you threw out in the crowd.
No way.
Yeah, and the set list and the 10,000 Hertz Legend poster. I'm still need to find time to just frame it all together for my music room, but yeah,
sick, man.
Yeah, and actually, what's funny about that show is that those guys, I remember them distinctly saying that it was one of the best crowds that they had seen through that tour. I guess they got a really warm reception in Michigan.
Yeah, I love playing Michigan. We had a great show in Detroit as well with Beck just recently at the Fox. But yeah, Michigan rules.
So you and Brian, so the album's done by the time you and Brian are touring the 10,000 Hertz record.
Well, the original version. Yeah. Then we were touring 10,000 Hertz, and that's when we both kind of said, let's retool this and make it more electronic, I guess is the layman term for what we did to it. But yeah, Time's Up. I mean, if anything, that's certainly something that fits in the Air catalog, but it's also really an homage to probably the stuff that they're into, like the original, Kraftwerks and the noise and the cone stuff and just the kind of, even for me, like one of my first records that I remember having access to, which my dad's record collection when I was a little kid. He had some weird stuff. He had Terry Riley and Curved Air. He had some Steve Reich. He had some just weird shit, and that stuff like really, really affected me. So I've always had this love of what I would call the soundtrack to a lunar landing music. Without it being muzak, it's very important that it still has like this kind of toughness to it.
Kind of like the first song on the Moon Safari album, like that kind of trippy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that record is a masterpiece of that kind of aesthetic. And so, yeah, I mean, that's my composition. Something I'm super proud of. There's a cool video for that too. Yeah, there's all these videos we made, man, because that was kind of another reason why we didn't tour. Well, first of all, we didn't get signed.
Right.
And we didn't try that hard, and I'll be honest. I mean, we weren't like kicking down the doors. I personally wasn't at all. I was like kind of in the middle of my solo career, and I had just gotten away from Elektra, and I was like, well, what's going to happen? I got to find another label. I got to do all this stuff. I got to make another record. And of course, it did take me a while to do that EP, which came out in 2003, and then another 4 years before the I'm Okay, You're Okay record. But yeah, at the time we were having meetings and people were like, so is this your focus, Jason? The Stevie Eyes? And I was like, yeah. Not really. They're like, what about your solo career? I mean, are you making another solo record? And like, oh hell yeah. Like that. I very much didn't want Stevie Eyes to take over what I was doing.
Right.
So that said, we played 3 shows to play. We had these crazy films that are, again, something I'm really proud of. Those were films that Roger and I put together at his studio. And those incorporate our real love of like public access TV from the 80s and just weird cult films. And we edited these together that kind of tell the stories of each song, with no usage agreements, of course. No money exchange to major film companies, and we played them behind us, and we were like, okay, I hope we don't get sued. But that was something we just wanted to give people like a really cool show, and we did that on a no budget, like paying for it ourselves. and it was really involved. So that's kind of why we didn't tour, and probably why it would be hard to even tour this. I mean, there's really no talk of touring this. If something happened where a festival asked us to do a show, of course we would do that. Or
right.
if we, it would be amazing to be able to put together shows like in New York, LA, and London or whatever, or in Paris, and that's it. Again, that would all depend on the public's desire.
Right. So when you're sitting in the parking lot kind of brainstorming this thing, was there ever time like where you thought, hey, we need maybe bring another person? Was it always going to be a trio? Because, I mean, the guy that stands out in my mind who probably could have been in this, who also worked with Air, was Justin, who you're playing with now.
Yeah.
So were you guys dead set on a trio, or did you guys ever discuss bringing other people into the band as well?
No, it was just always going to be the three of us. I mean, I can play every instrument. Roger can play a lot of instruments, and Brian's a fantastic drummer. So it's kind of like probably the less cooks in this kitchen, the better.
The better. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's already hard enough to work, I think, with me because I have so many ideas, and I'm, I mean, if you ask Roger, he'd probably be like, well, if I wasn't there, Jason would just play all the synth parts, and they'd be awesome, and I wouldn't be able to go over them because there'd be no need to, and then I'd be in the corner laughing, and probably not exactly the best kind of thing to have a bunch of people like that. So the fewer the better. So
once you figure out, all right, hey, we're gonna do this synth pop new wave type thing, do you go home and listen to a bunch of records? Do you get out the Kajagoogoo and get some inspiration?
Hey man, there's no Kajagoogoo influence on there.
I know.
I actually love You Shy. It's amazing.
But seriously, I mean, do you go out and you listen to the Kraftwerk, the Gary Newman, and kind of build the inspiration first, or do you just already know the shit out of that stuff and then just?
Yeah, it's definitely the latter. I mean, no, I never actually, or I should say, I very, very rarely what's the word I'm looking for, reference anything when I'm working. That era and that genre is so ingrained in me anyway, and all of us, Brian and Roger as well, of course, as well. That we didn't need to reference anything, and I don't like to do that because. I mean, there's a thing that I've noticed that's been happening in the last handful of years, which is people influence to me when I was a kid meant you have these things that you like, and sometimes they're in the back of your mind when you're working on something as maybe a silent soundboard, that's an influence. Now influence means when somebody says, what was your influence on that? And they said, and you're like, oh, right, because you just ripped it off. Like it has a completely watered down meaning now. I don't like to have something fresh in my mind that somebody else created when I'm working. I mean, all that stuff is swimming around in your head.
Right.
So everything that you like, including the sound of your tires going over bumps in the road that make a rhythm. I mean, everything is swimming in your head. And so I just like to try and pick things out at will and almost randomly so that to avoid just a straight rip-off,
And I see that in Fascinating. Around 3 minutes into it, you've got like this portamento where the note's gliding up, and it basically it takes you to Gary Newman Cars. I mean, it's the sound. So
yeah.
When I say that, is that a compliment, or is that like what do you want the listener to hear? Do you want them specifically to hear that influence right there?
No, that I'm unaware of that effect. But
and maybe it's not exact, but to me, like the first thing I heard it, I was like, oh man, that's from Cars. Right.
Yeah. No. Even right now as I'm talking to you, I don't know exactly what part of the song you're talking about, but I'm fine with it. It's. These things are going to happen. You're going to write something or get a certain tone on an instrument, and it's going to be, well, especially if you're using the same synth.
Yeah, you're using a Polymoog, right? I mean, is that the driving?
Yeah, I mean, we had a Multimoog, we had a Polymoog, we had a Prophet 5, Prophet 10, Prophet 1. We had a museum. I mean, Roger has a synthesizer museum, and I have a couple of cool things. I have an Oberheim 2-voice and a bunch of cool stuff. And
did the 2-voice make it onto the album?
Oh yeah, the 2-voice is all over. The 2-voice is all over the record. It's in Time's Up, that
Yep.
That's my two voice, me playing it, and that thing's all over the place.
And how about, in one of the shots, the promo shots, you guys are all sitting on the floor and you see Roger's gleaming on there, the clear one.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to explain to folks, what the gleaming is or whatnot, but I mean, did that actually make it on the album as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, if somebody has a gleaming, you have to use it. That's the bottom line. I think that's the quote for the interview.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, if there's a gleaming in the house, it must be turned on and used for something, even if it's just the white noise it generates.
Right.
That thing is crazy, and I don't even know if there are more than 10 of those made. I have no idea, but
it's kind of like the Lindrum, where there's only like 300 made, and who knows how many are left. That right. Synth is like the holy grail of synth.
I know that, and the EMS. I know, and I think we have EMS there as well. Which is not a very functional synth, but it's like playing Battleship with those little tags. Roger actually bought that from Eddie Jobson from me.
Yeah, I think I've read that before, like in his little bio on his website.
Yeah, unfortunately he's sold it since, but yeah, pretty sure we had that on that record. Or he might have bought that right after the TV. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But yeah, just a ton of stuff. And again, if you're using era-specific stuff, you're going to stumble onto the same exact sounds as some of these records from the past. And if they work in the song, then you use them, and then that's going to be something that's going to be recognizable. And for some people, what makes them good? That sounds like this because it's a sound.
Right.
Maybe not the notes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I actually draw the line right there. I have no problem at all aping tones, because tones to me it's a creative process, of course, but it's not writing. And, how many people have been trying to ape the tone of Sgt. Pepper or Village Green Preservation Society or Steely Dan Asia for forever. Like,
right.
These are fantastic sounding things that if you can get somewhere close to that, you're smiling. Yeah.
Do you think you could have captured the essence of the record? Nowadays you've got virtual analog, software synths, plugins. Do you think the album would have had the same, awesomeness without the the synths that you guys used and the drum machines and et cetera, et cetera?
No, I mean, I don't. Not a lot of this is a debate that will rage on for eternity. And certainly now the where soft synths are and plugins and all that stuff, you can achieve a shit ton more than you could have in 2000.
Right.
I mean, what I remember, that was the first thing I ever did. That was the first computer recording I ever did. And we actually tracked the drums, guitars. We tracked all the instruments to tape and then bounced everything into Pro Tools. And then all the vocals were just done without tape, just in the Pro Tools. And I had never seen Pro Tools. I'd never worked in Pro Tools. So that was my acid test, was actually making that record. And I remember the little time bomb icon that would come up with a lit fuse. That was basically like your session is about to explode. And I remember like I think I ran out of the room the first time. I was like screaming, like, what the this thing? I think the computer's gonna explode. And that if anybody hearing this remembers that, then you know how much computers have progressed. Now it's a little rainbow wheel of death, which usually goes over pretty quickly. But yeah, so no, I mean, I think the use of all of that authentic gear, it's not only something that I'm obsessed with, and that I know Roger and Brian, we're all obsessed with the real deal stuff. It's constructed better, it plays better, it's sexier to look at. It's way sexier to play and turn knobs in the real world than it is to click on knobs with a mouse. I mean, it just is. And
well, I know like as somebody listening in the audience, and I know, like you just said, it's debated, but I mean, just even being at that Beck show, when you guys went into I Feel Love and Roger's pounding out on the Jupiter 8, I mean, you feel it.
You feel it.
You feel it, and I just went and saw a band called Chromeo, and they play to a track, but there's a point in the concert when they get on the MS-20, or they're using like a synthesizer.com. And I mean, it is night and day. It cuts through the mix.
Yeah.
And it's,
I know. It's bizarre. It's actually a bizarre thing how much of a difference it is. And
it's weird how something so sonic can turn an experience into like where you feel it.
Yeah. I mean, all those instruments have transformers in them, and transformers, old guitar amps have transformers. Old synthesizers have big ass. The transformers are why shit is heavy. An old tube integrated amplifier for your home stereo that weighs 80 pounds. This is the size of a toaster. Is heavy. It has these giant ass input and output transformers in it, and transformers are what sound good. Vintage recording consoles have transformers. They just sound better than ones that are transformerless. And obviously, a computer doesn't have this kind of technology. And I'm thinking music to me is like about movement. Speakers move. Hands move that make music. And a computer doesn't move. And this is kind of a layman fundamental point to make, but there's just something about when something's moving that I feel like that's actually connecting with the universe more, and it's connecting with what music was intended to be and how it's supposed to hit you as a human being. There's all these debates also raging about now. I forget what it is, but like the grounding tone of an A is actually not supposed to be 440. It's supposed to be 444, I think, or 440. It's some crazy thing that some people are like, oh, I'm doing my records to this new revelation that A440 is inherently wrong and has a negative impact on your soul. I mean, I just laughed, but I also kind of buy into that, and I certainly buy into some of Neil Young's arguments about CDs and how there's a mistake in the algorithm. They've been lying to you, man. And okay, who figured that out? But I also know that when I put on a record, it feels better. So there's all these little things that I guess I'm bringing it back to the authenticity of those instruments, and I mean that's crucial to me. I mean, I'm in my studio looking around, and it's just a mess of just vintage, you name it.
And that's why we love your albums.
Right on.
So you're getting back into the songwriting of the album.
Yeah.
So when you guys reconvene after the parking lot session, do you guys all go home and kind of start demoing, or did you want to write together so that it would kind of be even more organic, coming up with the ideas together? Like, how did that?
Well, like I said earlier, most of the stuff was based on these kind of synth, almost like guitar riffs played on a synthesizer, which to me, that's what Two-Way Army is. That's what Gary Newman is. It's, these kind of guitar riffs that are played only on synths.
Because he was a guitar player, right?
I don't even know. I mean, I can't imagine this weirdo playing a guitar, but I don't know. I mean, Two-Way Army certainly had guitars. But anyway, we kind of got together initially and started kind of hashing through these riffs, and that's kind of when I quickly decided, okay, I'm going to have to take these things and like turn them into something more than just this kind of nod to something so specific as that Gary Newman stuff or whatever,
And so what's that process like for you? How, because in the liner notes, you're talking about, you labored over the lyrics and the melodies. So how do you do that? What?
Well, I would just remember the riffs, and then I would turn them into, I created more sections for the song. So it has, a verse, chorus, bridge, maybe some other section. I kind of just turned them more into, for lack of a better term, traditional songs.
Okay.
Songs that could be played on an acoustic guitar and work, which you cannot say about a lot of synth bands.
No, you can't.
And these songs, you could basically break them all down and play them on an acoustic guitar, and they're good songs. And
which I think is part of the charm of the record, actually.
Thank you. Yeah. That's what I did. I went home and basically just started writing them on a guitar or a piano, and then I found, I have a friend who has a really great recording studio in his house, and we just holed up in that studio for we were there for 2 months or something, every day. And
so with all the stuff that you guys have going on, all the different projects, you were able to just knock out time. It wasn't like, hey, I'm here today, I'll work on it. I might see you guys, I might not.
No, I mean, we weren't as busy back then, and I certainly wasn't. I mean, the only thing I had going on was my solo stuff. I don't really do a lot of session stuff. I mean, Roger, that's what Roger mainly does, but I don't really do that very often. So, I had plenty of time. And Roger, I don't think Roger really missed very much. I mean, again, we weren't nearly as busy as we are now, and which is part of the beauty of youth. You're not as busy. But we just had all these songs finished, and I would go down the street to this cafe and have whatever, a meal or a beer or something, and I always had my notepad with me, and I just was really, the gun was till I had to get these lyrics done, because this thing was dragging out. This record was taking a long time, and we were taking our sweet time, but I just wanted to make it as good as possible and kind of get it done as quickly as possible, because I really thought that something was going to happen with it. Yeah, so I always had my notebook with me, and just worked on those lyrics incessantly throughout the whole process.
And you mentioned this a little bit before too, that you guys are all multi-instrumentalists. And so with that being said, did you guys all stick to, did Roger do most of the synths? Did you do most of the guitar and the bass work, et cetera, or did you guys all kind of contribute on the different instruments?
All of our opinions were there. I mean, the thing that will always happen if you have Roger involved in something is that everybody's going to think he played every synthesizer, which is definitely not true. I studied classical piano for 10 years. I'm probably a keyboard / pianist before I am a guitar player.
Right.
And so a lot of that synth stuff is me. A lot of the synth stuff, every idea that's on there, everything that's recorded is a collaboration between Roger and I as far as the parts. A lot of those parts that he's playing are my part, something that I'm singing to him. But there's no, and vice versa. So, but then, I'm playing all the guitar and bass, and then, Brian played all the drums, but again, all of that stuff everything we did was by committee by the three of us, because we were all kind of so excited about this.
Right. So one of the things I found really interesting as well is your whole, the character voice that you do on this album. And I guess for me personally, I think it's one of your best vocal performances. It really, really just kind of hit a note with me. But I know, reading past interviews, that you've always said that you've played, because you play by yourself, when you play the bass, you might play a little bit late, because that's how bass players are and whatnot. And so with this performance, what was the inspiration? What was, for the character?
As a vocalist?
Yeah, as a vocalist.
Well, the character, the different kind of characters just came from the lyrics. I mean, like I said, this was subject matter that was fairly uncharted territory for me. So it was very easy to, to for instance, to sing "Need Love" or "Love to Need." I can't remember what it's called, but
"Love to Need."
To sing that one in that crazy falsetto, which those guys weren't around when I did that. I did that at my studio, and I brought that in. I'm like, check this out, and they were like, what the hell? I love it. And Roger still to this day starts cracking up when he recalls first hearing it. It was insane. I had no idea that you had that in you at all. So that was easy to do, because again, it's just those are not lyrics that I normally write. They're not nearly as emotional or honest. You know what I mean? Some of the more raging stuff like "Party's Over" or "Crash Your Car." I mean, "Crash Your Car" is pretty honest. I mean, that's actually written about somebody I know who was a Bel Air kid who's doesn't have to do anything, doesn't have to be successful, but he's he's doing music, and it's a rage against the the privileged youth of a lot of the people in this city that I live in, and who get in the way of the real deal guys.
Right.
But like The Party's Over or Mission Submission. I mean, those were. I just like that there's a little bit of a creepy kind of paranoid aspect to them. I mean, The Party's Over to me, when we were doing that, and I just kept putting more and more of these nasty guitars on there, and I was just like, man, this sounds like Killing Joke. Like I was getting so excited. We were like every new riff that I would put on there, we were just like, holy shit! And the middle section almost sounds like AC/DC for a second.
Yeah, it's funny that you're talking about this song, because I'm looking down at my notes, and just what I have in my notes are the attitude in your voice on this song, and then the guitar solo. I guess you call it a solo, where you start with the one guitar and it's pretty gnarly, and then you just keep adding and building and building, and then stop and then get into the song again, and it's just it's awesome.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks. That solo is actually what I'm talking about. That second guitar that comes in reminds me of AC/DC all the time. It's in a really fun way. But I mean, it's just the lyrics really dictated how I would sing the stuff. And there was really there's no discussion. There was no like, okay, more attitude on, there's none of that William Shatner stuff. It was just, I just started singing it, and all right, two takes of it, we're done.
Even with Mission Submission, what I love about that song is that in the very beginning of the song, you've got like this effect that sounds like, a Jetsons car kind of moving across. And what you guys do sonically, you paint this picture that's just futuristic and almost like Metropolis, that Apple 1984 commercial. And I just think it's a testament to what you talk about, laboring over everything, because, I mean, what you guys do sonically to paint that imagery is amazing.
Thanks, man. Yeah. I mean, those weird little cars were, I always saw those cars that are in the You Got Lucky Babe video that Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers are driving in the desert.
Yeah.
That's why I always saw those weird little cars, or something from a Coma, or some weird 70s. It's very Logan's Run.
Yes.
Remember the little models of the freeways with the bubble cars. I mean, that's, to me, that's what we're trying to evoke, really. I feel like, I don't know if I'll ever move away from this real fascination and love for the artistic aspect of the 70s. To the 1970s, basically, there were a lot of crappy things happening. New York was dying. A lot of society was kind of dying with the how sleazy the sexual revolution had become, and all that stuff. But it was also pre-AIDS. It was also like, and the rock and roll art form, and on all the art forms, were much younger than they are now, and much less jaded. And I mean, any decade that would usher in progressive rock, to me, which by definition is no limits to exploration. I mean, that's a decade that I'm interested in, and the science fiction film genre of the 70s, and the vision of the future that was portrayed in 70s films like THX 1138 and Kubrick stuff, and it's just mind-boggling to me. It's just so much more interesting than our version of the future now. Well, basically because our version of the future now is that the planet is dead and we all die, and it's also like kind of a reality. So it's not as it doesn't have the same kind of playfulness, and so even my vision of the future in 2000, when I was writing those words, was kind of based on this 70s thing, and I think that's kind of where some of the kind of mystique comes from. I like to reference. For me, lyrically, I like to reference anything that is interesting to me. So I'm not topical at all. I'm hardly ever topical. I don't really read the paper,
right?
And I I still don't listen to every new band like a lot of people I know, where they feel like they have to keep up with the Joneses. They have to get the same haircut that everybody has. They have to do all this stuff. And I'm just like, that is so not how my mind operates. I'm drawing from things that nobody heard of in 1977 when it came out. Nobody ever heard of it. You know, I'm still obsessed with a band called Monochrome Set, which nobody knows. You know, they're one of my favorite, you know, clever, funny, amazingly intelligent rock bands.
And what was that? It kind of came fuzzy. What was the band name?
Oh, the Monochrome Set.
Monochrome Set.
The Monochrome Set, you know, they formed like 77, I think, in England, and they're just this weird art kind of fell into the punk, but they're certainly not a punk band. They're more of like a weird, you know how Wire fell into the punk genre umbrella, but if you listen to anything after their first album, they're not a punk band anymore. They're like a weird art rock band. And anyway, you know, it's just, there's just so much to draw on from that era. I don't know. There's a kind of a creativity that is just totally inspiring to me from that period, and certainly in film too. And film had a lot to do with the TBI's record. I mean, there's so much of that sci-fi thing happening. I mean, even the album cover to me is very filmic and strange. But then we were like, let's use the Nevermind Bollock's colors, the yellow and pink. You know, like that's just so. I mean, that was what was beautiful about them using it, was those are like the least offensive colors together, and it's one of the most like, you know, seemingly most offensive they use, even though it's not offensive. It's a freaking amazing rock and roll album, but you know, we could have made this black and silver or something, but no, yellow and pink.
That's cool that there's that much thought that went into.
Oh, everything, man. I'm a thorough guy. Like, I'll take an idea to the end. Otherwise, if you let somebody else, I mean, let's put it this way: there's a lot of people that would have better ideas than me, or at least be able to complement my ideas and take them somewhere that I couldn't have. But I can't afford them, and I don't know them personally, so I have to do it myself. Because those people are very successful, and you know, everybody knows that they're brilliant, but they also, you got to pay for that.
You know, and again, though, talking about the detail, I mean, you can listen to this album constantly, and there's so many layers to it that I found myself listening to it differently each time I listened to it. Hearing things like, in your remix, that unexpected, like, I guess Liberace type piano, like, runs in it, you know, and like my head just perks up, and I was like, wow.
Yeah. No, I know that remix was hilarious. I mean, I'm that will be the closest I'll ever get to rapping. You know, I just thought, oh, remix. Okay, remix means redo. I'd never done a remix before, and I just thought, oh, I'll just like make this totally different, and it's fun. It's meant to be kind of more of like a Jim Carroll, you know what I mean, like a nasty spoken thing.
Yeah, it turned out really cool, I thought.
Cool.
So after the album's all done and you guys put together this crazy live show, were the labels all there, and what happens next? What's the next process for the album to come out? Well, I know you touched on it briefly.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I know you touched on it briefly about you didn't really put too much effort into it, but I mean, were the labels, were they at the shows? What was their thought on the whole project?
A lot of labels were at the shows. A lot of labels said that they loved it. And I think they all got scared away, honestly, by the fact that everybody thought of me as a guy in the middle of a solo career, because my second solo record had only come out in '99, and this is 2000. So it was kind of like, well, is this what you're doing now? And I couldn't look anybody in the eye and say, absolutely, this is my thing, and maybe I'll make another solo record in a few years when the dust settles from this. I couldn't say that. So, you know, I think a couple of things. I think that was one component. They just weren't sure of all of our commitment to it. The second thing being that it was a bit ahead of the curve. And, you know, I don't know what people think of hearing that in 2000, 2001, when, the whole, the Killers hadn't even happened, like
right.
it was pre this anthemic. She's a Study to me is like a hit. And it just turned out to be like that.
It was a what? I'm sorry?
I think She's a Study is a hit song.
Oh yeah, it is.
It's got everything that it just has a very infectious chorus. It has a verse that is really, I think it's a good song. And I think it's a song that's very commercial is what I mean. But the instrumentation of it is like freaking Giorgio Moroder. And, that some people just have a knee-jerk reaction to that kind of sound. And I don't know. I think the listeners just didn't understand that we were serious.
Right.
First of all. And, again, it's like if we had slogged around and played clubs every week for 6 or 9 months, I bet we would have been signed, but we didn't do that. So, it's kind of like our own doing.
Especially.
What's that?
Oh, let's go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So no, I'm kind of finished. That was basically, yeah, it was just kind of our own doing. So, I'm just happy that it's out. I do wish that it had come out in the day, because we would have been seen as pioneers of that stuff instead of
Absolutely.
Didn't this already happen? Or,
That's what I was going to say, is that I remember being wherever and hearing Hella Good on the radio. No doubt, Rocksteady comes out. And that's after reading and scavenging, trying to figure out or find as much info as I could on TV Eyes. And I hear No Doubt come out, and I'm like, there's two minds. One is like, oh man, now these guys are going to look like they're copying this. And B, it was almost like, well, now there's a scene kind of developing. Somebody's actually in the mainstream doing this synth music, so maybe it's a platform. So I don't know, did you guys have any of that frustration or that type of feeling?
Sure. I basically kind of just had to put this record out of my mind. I guess I can't even remember when it came out in Japan, but that was, 4 years after we did it. It was
like 2006. Yeah.
Yeah. And at that point it was like, oh, cool. Like get licenses for it. Like, have this generate something. Have this, like, do something with this, people, please. Like, it's a great record, and I can't sit around and pull my hair out about it because I will, if I don't just, like, let it go and just say, well, what will happen with it will happen with it. And, that's a defense mechanism. That's a self-preservation mechanism at this point, because I've done so many records that around me have been like, this is amazing, and it's going to do this, and it's going to do that, and hold on, and then I'm like, and then the car goes flying the track, and I crash, and I get hurt, and so I have to, I just have to like make the hurt, and then hope somebody does something with it, and of course, agree to do everything necessary to help that along. But so when I started hearing this type of production seeping into pop culture in the 2000s, and still right now, this record doesn't actually sound like it was recorded 14 years ago.
No, you could put it out today and it would fit right in.
Exactly. We did.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, it would bother me. But there's all sorts of stuff that over the years that had made me think, wait a second, like, why that and not what I just did?
Right.
Like, I don't understand. And is it because if I have a meeting and somebody, and I get moody or something, and then, he's difficult. I have no idea. One guy can be moody. This is something that's perplexed me my whole life. There's another artist, quote unquote, can be moody, and everybody's like, he's so moody, it's amazing. Like Elliot. Okay, Elliot Smith. Sorry, Elliot. I knew Elliot. I loved Elliot. Elliot Smith could do no wrong. The guy could just be, nice one minute and standoffish the next minute, or a prick the next minute, and it's like, oh, that's just Elliot. And then on the other end of the spectrum, the sadly missed Liam Gallagher and all of his antics could do anything he freaking wanted to do. He could say he wanted to beat George Harrison up in a boxing ring.
Right.
And it was like, this guy's amazing. Like, or we're the best band in the world. That's all they ever said. And if I say the record's fucking awesome and you're an idiot if you don't get it, then I just get like,
then you're banished.
That guy is cancerous. Like, and it's just this weird thing that I've noticed. I swear to God, I can't get away with anything. And it might be, I don't know what it is, but it might be because I play everything. But I don't even think a lot of people even know that. Like, I would say maybe 60% of the people that have my records even know that I'm playing every instrument. I don't know. But I don't know what it is. But I guess when I say something or behave in a way that isn't gracious, people are like, that guy's a dick. And and everybody else is just like, that guy's an artist. And it's just weird. So, a lot of things over the years have bothered me when I hear something that sounds like it. Maybe they've been listening to me,
right?
Or even more realistically, things that I like, and they're incorporating that into their sonic landscape, and I just have to go, okay, like, well, I liked them a long time ago, but whatever. It's just something. It's honestly, man, it's something that I'm used to, and I just would let it go at this point because it will actually give you a tumor.
Right.
To worry about it.
So do you think, like, with, if Omnivore is re-releasing this thing, but back in the day, if you would have had YouTube and the social media and Pledge Music, where you see the Zombies and Howard Jones releasing stuff there, do you think it would have been, the album would have had a better shot?
I mean, if we incorporated all that stuff, we're not incorporating that now. I certainly could use more exposure with my own stuff, with the TVI. It's like if we had all decided to really push this stuff. I mean, we kind of thought that a lot of stuff would happen via soundtrack work with this record. I shouldn't say soundtrack work. I mean music placement. Brian being in the film music world as much as he is, and he wasn't as entrenched in it, of course, back then as he is now. But he did have his relationship with Sophia, and he put, there's one song that's in the Lost in Translation thing. And little in fact, a lot of people don't know this, the karaoke music that Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson are singing to is the TVI's.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We actually spent like a couple of days, or maybe it was just one day. And believe me, one of the hardest things I've ever done is to take the soul out of music to make karaoke music. It's really challenging. But we did, I believe, Anarchy in the UK, Brass in Pocket. There's a couple of others. There's like 4 karaoke songs that we did. That's TBI. All playing like machines. But yeah, so I just thought that there would be more placement stuff. And that's kind of what I was banking on. Because to me, also, this music is, with my own solo stuff, I'm way more precious. With this thing, I wouldn't mind it being in a commercial.
Right.
I wouldn't want it to be in a Depends commercial, but if it was in a Jaguar commercial, or a Mercedes, you know what I mean? Like a weird, like a German, like Mercedes, like going down the Autobahn, that'd be badass.
Right.
And to me, it completely makes sense and would fit. So, that was one avenue that I was urging everybody to really work. And to date, nothing has happened, but it doesn't mean that it won't. Now that Omnivore has put this out and they have their own people working those angles, so we'll see. So,
any plans for possibly another album or a reunion concert?
Well, yeah. Like I said, we would definitely do a couple of shows. We'd do more than a couple of shows if there was a reason to.
Right.
But, it's something that we would think about, and maybe I haven't talked to, I'm supposed to meet up with the Omnivore peeps very soon. I'm actually leaving town tomorrow for a few days, but when I come back next week, I'll talk to them and see how everything's going. And of course, we're not in a world anymore where there's like surprisingly large record sales of anything.
Right.
So I don't expect to be blown away by any numbers that I hear, but But yeah, I mean, I would love to do a show. I would love to do this show again. It was really fun. It was actually, and now so much time has elapsed that it would be just a lot more fun, because I wouldn't have the kind of battle in my head like, wait, this is not what I'm doing. Like, I'm solo. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
I was really in that mindset back then. I was conflicted. Now I'm no longer conflicted at all about it. It's something that I totally believe in and would love to play it live. So
That's awesome. I'd love to see it live.
Yeah.
And kind of last question, it's kind of funny. Your musical career and Roger's seem like the double helix, kind of intertwining every few years. Through Jellyfish, TV Eyes, Back with Beck. Do you foresee any future projects with Roger? Yeah. Right.
But like
That would be amazing to hear. So what else? I know that you're working on your a new solo album as well. What else?
I am. I'm doing that right now.
And when can we expect the next album from Jason Falkner?
Well, I feel so guilty for saying over the years that next summer, but and because I am the boy who cried wolf. But I think next summer, I think actually before the summer, what I'm doing is I just bought this really crazy recording console. I already have a cool recording console from the 70s, but I bought a different one, a much better one. So that's being gone through by the seller in Chicago, and then it's going to be shipped out to me, and I should have that all set up here within a few weeks. And I've already recorded 5 songs for a new record, but only 1 or 2 of them have lyrics and a vocal on them. The lyrics are like the hard thing for me. So, but I have a ton of ideas. I definitely have a direction that I want it to go sonically. I would be done with it by like January, and then I'm not going to do the thing that I've done in the past where it came out in Japan and then years later comes out here because it just takes the wind out of the sails. That was certainly never my intention to do things like that.
Is that tough for you? Like, I mean, because you've got your fans and the only way they can get your stuff is like a $40 disc after shipping and stuff. I mean,
yeah.
Is that tough on your fans?
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure it is. And it's not how I want things to be. I mean, the whole Japanese connection with me happened because they literally just said, we want to really serve. There was these guys have a band in Japan that are very, very popular called Really. And they're massive, Jason Falkner fans. I suppose they're massive Jellyfish fans. And they have their own label in Japan. And they contacted me and just said, look, we want to put out you have another record. We would love to put it out. They give me in advance. They give me like actually pretty decent money for an independent label. And right there is the fire under my tuchus. Like if somebody's giving me money, I got them. Cool. Now I'm making a record because I have some money.
Right.
Like, that's not why I do it, but it's the fire that will make me finish it.
Right.
And you know what I mean? And
absolutely.
And so so that's how that came about. And then they released it. I went over there like 3 or 4 years in a row, starting in like 2000, and saw my profile grow rapidly over there. Like I started doing the first time was 2 nights in this little tiny amazing place that's holds 150 people, and 2 nights sold out. So that's whatever, 300. And then the next time, playing one night at a 600 capacity place, and then the next time selling out 1,000-seater, all in the span of 3 years of one album.
Wow.
In 3 years. So that was cool, and that's kind of where I went for a little while. I was just like dealing with Japan and doing a few shows here. But when I do shows here, I lose money. So without a label, it's hard. So anyway, and then the second record, the most recent record of mine, which is called All Quiet on the Noise, is something I'm so proud of, and I'm really not happy that to date that's only been released in Japan. My same friends that put out Okay, You're Okay in the U.S., which is a distribution company called Cobra Side, they wanted to put out All Quiet on the Noise floor as well, and I just wasn't happy with the distribution deal because it's nothing. There's no promotion.
Right.
They just make a product, and then they put it in shops, but nobody knows it's there. So, it's not ideal. And I just, so I kind of blew that off, and then here we are years later. I was like, fuck, I should have done that, because at least it would be available. At least it would be on iTunes here and all that stuff, and there would be CDs and vinyl of it. But so what I'm thinking is this next record, when it's almost done, I'm going to send it to some of the people that I know that run cool labels. I do actually know a lot of people that on the music, and
right.
And I mean, I could after this much time, but and just say, look, I know I'm not 20 years old. It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. And here's my new. Can you hear me? Oh, sorry. Here I am. And I'll just say, look, here's my new record. And what a beautiful thing would be is to do a release of All Quiet on the Noise floor, like while I'm finishing this record. So you have that record, and
kind of wet the palate.
What's that?
To wet the palette so that when
to wet the palette and piggyback it with my new record, and so there'll be this release of that one, and then the bigger like explosive thing of the new one. And to me, that's my plan. Hopefully I can make that happen. Oh, there's also something I should mention. This record that I am actually looking for a label for right now. I made this amazing record with one of my heroes, this guy R. Stevie Moore.
Mm-hmm.
You know him?
No, I'm not familiar with his work.
Oh man, okay. When we get off the phone, please go check out. This guy is 62, I think now. His first record is from '78.
Wait, is that I think I've seen pictures of you and Roger in the studio. Was Roger?
No. Roger's not involved at all.
Okay, that was another guy. I guess it was an older gentleman where I saw you guys both in the studio, I think working with somebody, but...
Oh, no, that's Emmett Rhodes.
Yes.
Do you not know him?
I'm not familiar with him.
Oh, my God. Okay, well, here's two guys to immediately go check out, and they're very different. Emmett Rhodes' first record is like 1970. It is so good. His downfall was that he sounds like... It sounds like Ram era McCartney. But it's a guy from Fulton, California. I'm sorry. Fulton. Yeah, and just this odd guy that played all the instruments himself. Records sound incredible. They're the warmest, gluey '70s thing you've ever heard. The first record and the second record, which is called Mirror. The first one is just called Emmett Rhodes. He's like standing in a burned out kind of house or something. It's really good. And then the guy that I was talking about is R. Stephen Moore, who is from Nashville. We made this amazing record. He's kind of revered as and viewed as the godfather of the whole do-it-yourself and lo-fi movement. Everybody from Ty Segall to, of course, Ariel Pink and all those guys. Ariel is an old friend of mine, and that's one of the things that we bonded on was this weird guy R. Stevie Moore.
Oh, okay.
And through social media and shit, we became like a mutual admiration society. And then he came out here, and Ariel and he came over, and we did this 7-inch called Ku Klux Glam. So this guy, and that's an R. Stevie Moore title, by the way. He's one of the most irreverent, amazing, hyper creative. Check out his album titles are insane as well. Delicate Tension is one. Phonography is brilliant. These are like again, I'll mention Public Access. I don't know how old you are if you know what I mean by that.
Like public access TV.
Public access TV.
Yeah, I know what that is.
Yeah, like kind of like shitty local programming.
Yeah.
Stuff that would be like this really intriguing stuff. And there was kind of there was a real homemade quality to it. And R. Stevie Moore is that on record. But the songs are amazing too. So he'll have spoken word. He'll have where all of his voices are sped up and he's singing "My Country 'Tis the," but then he'll like burp. He's just like totally insane, but brilliant stuff. I can't speak highly enough about him. So I'm trying to shop that record as well.
Oh, okay.
Right now, and Omnivore seems to be living up to their name, and basically wanting to put anything out that I'm doing right now. So they've talked about doing that, and we're gonna reissue my first 2 solo records with fully deluxe, like new artwork, unseen artwork, and really crazy liner notes that I'll probably labor over for weeks, and vinyl and all that stuff. So
is that basically how they came to want to release TV Eyes too, just because they've been wanting your stuff?
Well, yeah, they did the Jellyfish thing first, and Roger sent me an email asking if I would write something about it, I think. And then I was like, oh, what's this label? And I just got in touch with them, and then they were like, by the way, we are huge fans of your solo stuff and would love to do something with you. And I was like, well, what about a new record? And they're like, well, we're not really doing like new stuff. It's more just like a reissue place. And I was like, cool. And now they're even like, what about your new record? So, so we'll see. Hopefully things happen CVI thing, at least as far as just some sort of momentum, so
that would be great. Is there anything that you want to add about this project that we didn't cover or touch?
Man, I'd have to say I think we nailed every single topic about it. I think it's good. I can't think of anything else to say about it.
And how can we get a hold of Jason Falkner? You have a website, Twitter, Facebook, any of that stuff?
I'm on Facebook. Although I didn't transfer it over to a music page, so
okay.
I've maxed out of friends for like 7 years on there. And I haven't done anything about it, but I do if I get I do answer messages and stuff. Somebody sends me a message, and that is where I would put any new news, even though I don't really do that much. But I will start to. I guess it's kind of like once there's more news, I mean, I'm not going to be like, yeah, I had a great sandwich. I'm not one of those guys.
Right.
And Twitter, I just have like this weird fundamental problem with the whole concept. But I did join Instagram like a month ago, and I was always like, whenever I hear anybody go, follow on Twitter or Instagram, I'm like, shut the fuck up. But like, stop telling me what to do. Like, you're not that interesting. But now I really like Instagram because at least it's not so much like, look at me and what I'm doing. It's more like, look at this picture that I think is interesting.
Right. Yep.
I kind of like that aspect of it. It's just not quite as vulgar self-promotion. But again, I'm a guy that needs to self-promote, so I need to get over this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's a slow process for me, very slow.
No, I understand completely. I mean, I won't even let my kids' picture up on Facebook, so I get you.
Yeah. I mean, Facebook owns all of the images you put.
Oh, yeah. I think it's horrible.
It's bananas.
So
it's totally ridiculous. So, but anyway, yeah. So, what I was going to say, I am going to get a website completely redone and up and running so that, and there'll be links at Facebook and stuff to go to that for like proper, ideally I'd like to find somebody to run that for me.
Right.
But again, that's something that you generally have to pay for. And that's kind of like, I'd rather buy another vintage guitar than pay for that. But
absolutely.
Anyway,
well,
yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and talking with me about this really incredible album. And hopefully it will gain some momentum and will force you guys to get in there and do another album and maybe even a tour.
Yeah, well, thank you, man. It was a pleasure.